Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an episode of Backcourt Press, or aka just NBA Talks with me, your host, Hunter Metnick here. Um, I've been watching a bunch of the games recently, and I want to just talk about my thoughts on some players, some different aspects of the NBA. I'm going to try and keep most of them short, um, but I've got a couple of things jotted down that I've noticed in the past couple of days and thought it'd be fun to discuss. So, without further ado, follow me on Instagram at Backcourt Press, Twitter at Backcourt Press _ending, I believe. YouTube at Hunter Medic, which this will be on, obviously. So subscribe, and please let me know what your thoughts on everything that I'm going to talk about down below in the comment section. So let's get right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the progression of a player on my favorite team, the Golden State Warriors, Andrew Wiggins. On the Timberwolves, he obviously has not lived up to the number one overall hype, and he's gotten a lot of slander in the past couple of years on the Timberwolves about not only work ethic but defensive presence, his presence on the court, his mentality, and just everything that involves being on and off the court. And it's weird to see him leading all small forwards right now in blocks per game. And I want to just discuss what a change of scenery can really do to a player. You see Wiggins, he gets so much slander. He's been at 20 points per game scorer nearly his entire career. He's got one of the nicest mid-range shots, honestly, in the NBA. He's pretty deadly from the mid-range area, and he's never really tried a lot defensively. And I think that's where most of his slander comes from, especially on Minnesota, a bad team that needed defense and scoring. And he brought the scoring aspect of it. But apparently 20 points per game wasn't enough for a number one overall pick. That makes sense. But the 20 points per game just didn't cut it, and his defensive presence was awful. And when the Warriors traded D'Angelo Russell for him, I thought it was a perfect trade. Wiggins doesn't have to be the number one guy on the team, even next to Karl-Anthony Towns. There were some nights where they asked him to be the number one guy, and he just couldn't live up to it. So here he's, although like Klay Thompson's been injured, when he was traded, he looked to be the number 3 star next to Klay and Steph, and he has done a fantastic job of developing his game into what the Warriors need him to be. When they need him to get a bucket, he'll go right into the post and he'll work the mid range. His one dribble pull up has been phenomenal for this team, and he's got averaging 1.4 blocks a game, and I think that's largely a big factor of Draymond Green presence. Draymond Green's, he's the best glue guy in the NBA in my opinion. Marcus Smart right behind him. That's on my new Instagram post. Go check it out. But Draymond just makes everyone around him want to win. His mentality is just win first. I don't care what I need to do for this team. I don't care if I put up 7 points on 3 for 25 shooting as long as we win the game. And I think he's brought that mentality with Wiggins, where Wiggins is like, I don't have to be the number one guy. I can get a bucket when I want to. And next thing you know, he's thriving. Defensively, he looks like he's trying his hardest out there, and that's all I could really ask for. And so I'm really excited to see what Andrew Wiggins can continue to do for this Warriors team. And he's on a bigger contract. I believe it's like $26 million a year. Some people could say overpaid, but if you look what he's done for this team, especially with Kelly Oubre struggling to start the season, except for last night when he dropped 40 points on the Dallas Mavericks. What a game that was. But no, Wiggins has developed as a player, and he's shown that he can grow in this league. And I've been very happy about it personally as a Golden State Warrior fan, because D'Angelo Russell's my favorite player in the NBA. So I was sad to see him go, but him and Curry would never work next to each other. And Wiggins is such a better fit for a player next to Steph Curry. And I could see him being just turning into an all-star almost through. He might be an all-star this year if we're going to count the votes. I believe he's like 7th in forwards in the West, which is pretty funny. I watched a lot of the Nuggets Lakers game last night. Sorry about that. And one thing I noticed is I'm going to try and pull up the stats actually from that game, because boy, do the Nuggets miss a player like Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant did whatever that team needed to do, whether it was on the defensive or offensive side. And what boggles my mind is that Paul Millsap has turned into a spot-up 3-point shooter. Paul Millsap last night shot 3 for 13 and 0 for 5 from 3. And I swear, if you watch that game, it looked like he took 25 threes that game. He'd do like step backs, like one dribble step backs. I'm like, Paul Millsap's trying to play the small forward position for this team with Barton at the 2, JaMychal Green at the 4 and Jokic at the 5, and it's not. He doesn't have the foot speed on defense to keep up with 4s. He doesn't have the shooting ability or to keep up with 3s. He doesn't have the shooting ability to be a 3. And he had 10 rebounds last night. Maybe you could make the argument that JaMychal Green's a 3, but he's not even a 3. Michael Porter Jr. is coming off the bench. That I don't know. Maybe he just needs to get healthy again. But Paul Millsap turning into a spot up shooter for this Denver Nuggets team is just awful. It's never been his game. Even when he was an all-star, he was a mid-range to low post kind of guy. Big body rebounder, smaller for his size, but always worked hard on the glass. And next to a guy like Jokic, you would expect Jokic to be able to stretch the floor and Paul Millsap stay relatively close to the paint, and JaMychal Green. But I mean, last night, the most threes attempted on this team were by JaMychal Green and Paul Millsap, and they shot 2 for 11 as a total. And that's just bad. I don't, the floor spacing on this Nuggets team is really bad. They had a really good lead. I was shocked, honestly, when I saw their lineup and saw they had a lead going into it. It was largely because Monte Morris off the bench had a big game, and Jokic did Jokic type things. Actually, Jokic had a really bad game. Never mind. First half, it didn't look like that. The first half, they dominated this game, and next thing you know, Paul Millsap just took like 20 seconds left on, like 15 seconds left on the shot clock. He's pulling up for a 1 dribble 3. I'm like, what? This is not what the Nuggets want you to do. He signed him back for the minimum because he was a part of this team, and I don't blame him for doing that, especially after making $30 million over the past 2 years or during the past 2 years. It's been crazy. But Paul Millsap turning into a spot up shooter for this team is not going to work, and they're really going to have to figure something out, whether it's going to be a trade for a starting shooting guard that can really play the shooting guard position, or they're going to have to start Monte Morris, bring Michael Porter Jr. in as a 3, but Barton's not a 2. Also, Barton's never been that great of a shot creator, especially this season. He's been worse. This Nuggets team's in a little bit of trouble. Jokic for MVP. I think I have him at 3rd on my list, behind Embiid at 1 and LeBron at 2. You could even throw KD and Kawhi in there. Those 5 are playing remarkable this season, but Paul Millsap being a stretch 4, and just spot up shooting and shooting long mid-range shots and 3s is not going to be successful for this team. And I don't know how his career's turned into that. Didn't seem like that over the past couple of years. Maybe it has been. I just haven't been paying attention to the Nuggets. Whoops. But no, just this Nugget spacing is not working, and I want to see what Mike Malone does to change it, because it's really bad. Another thing I saw from this game that I've got the stats right here. Talen Horton-Tucker has been incredible. In 22 minutes last night, he shot 8 for 12, 17 points with a plus-minus of 17, which was second highest on the team. 1 for 2 from 3-point range. But his finishing ability, he can get to the rim so easily, and his right-handed spin on the left side, his reverse spin was amazing. The progression of him, we've seen him shine. I think it was Summer League or G League a couple of times, and all the Lakers fans were like, give him a chance, and they never gave him a chance. And then they finally gave him a chance this season, a little bit of last season, and he's really living up to it. I could see him, if they make it to the finals, he's going to be playing valuable minutes for this team. He played more minutes than Caruso last night, and Caruso and Marc Gasol in the starting lineup, and almost as many as KCP. So I expect Talen Horton-Tucker to be a huge part of this Lakers run if they do it, because he also is a very solid defensive player. 3 steals and 1 block, which is tied his team for most steals. Obviously, Anthony Davis had 3 and 2, which is, it's Anthony Davis. Do you expect that? But Talen Horton-Tucker, man, he's become a great role player for this team, and it's cool to see players like that who weren't given a lot of opportunities and then turn it into something. So good for THT. I hope that he does keep getting valuable minutes on this Lakers team. So those are my thoughts on the Nuggets and the Warriors. I just want to get that out of the way, because Paul Millsap is just really confusing me, and I think he's probably confusing a lot of Nuggets fans as well. The next thing I have written down is the Sixers Hornets game that James Borrego sold the bag on. LaMelo's, I think it was second start for Terry Rozier, who's been out, and he decided not to play the fouling game randomly. He decided to let the Sixers literally just run out the clock, only down 8, and it made no sense. But the main thing I want to talk about is LaMelo, because he there's 13, 15 seconds left, and Joe Embiid was running out the clock, and he poked it out and pulled up for a 3 and made it, and then they went into the fouling game finally with James Borrego. Yeah, he was going to let the clock run, which was weird to me. But if it were to be someone that's not LaMelo Ball do that play, I want to know what the media would think about it, because like we've seen that in college sometimes where like the game will be like well over with, and then a player will steal the ball and go down and get away up and just pretend like the game's not over and whatever. And they get hated on so much for it. They're just like, come on, in the game, it's stupid. But if it like, an NBA player were to do that, I think we saw, who was it? Someone against the Toronto Raptors. I think it was Lance Stevenson. I might be completely wrong on this, but I remember that the Raptors, and I think it was the Pacers, got into like an argument about a last second shot when there was no time left and they got in a fight. I'm like, if it wasn't LaMelo who did this, right? Like, how would the media take it? Because LaMelo is this year's like star player. We had Zion last year. God, who was before Zion? I'm drawing a blank, but he's this year's star player, this star young player that everyone's excited to watch. And for him to do that is just very weird. Good for him for playing until the clock runs out. No one else on that team was playing. James Borrego with like a minute and a half left, just let them run out the clock down 10 or so. And I'm like, that team was down by so much in that game. They're down, I think, almost down 25-30. They made this huge run based off of like the Martin brothers taking threes. Miles Bridges heated up. Devontae Graham, I think, shot really bad, but a lot of those like role players really stepped up and were making their threes, and they had a lot of momentum going for them. And next thing you know, with a minute and a half left in the game, he just was like, nah, let's just try and get a steal instead of playing the foul game, which I just don't agree with as an NBA fan and a wannabe coach when I get older. I'm a Temple, rep the college. I'm a Temple basketball reporter as well, and I went to the post game interview for, I believe it was Temple versus Tulane or Tulsa. It was one of those two. And Coach McKee, the Temple coach, decided to do the following game with like 2 minutes left because he thought it gave the team the best chance to win, only down by like 9. And I loved it. It gave them opportunities. They missed a couple free throws, and they went down. They were able to score, and they made it a closer game. They didn't end up winning, but it stops the clock and it gives your guys a chance to scoring faster times. I don't know. I don't like James Borrego's his ideas when it comes to that. But I would like to see how the media were to take that play if it wasn't LaMelo Ball. That's what I want to say on that. My next thought I've got, hopefully we're not running too bad on time, is Zion Williamson underrated? He is having a remarkable season for that Pelicans team. The Pelicans suck, largely because of coaching, in my opinion, and the fact that Lonzo Ball has been running off ball for like 15 games, and now they're finally giving the ball, and look what happens. He's averaging very good numbers. But Zion is so under the radar right now, averaging 24 and 8 on, what is it? What's his field goal percentage this year? 60% field goal percentage. And I'm over here like he had like 15 in the first quarter the other night. He has been incredible. He is living up to the hype so much, and no one's talking about him anymore. He'll get a block or a steal every once in a while. He'll go on like House of Highlights or ESPN, but him doing 24 and 8, and he's not even getting talked as like an all-star or anything like that is just crazy to me, because he just dominates that paint. His post game is incredible. I'm hoping he can learn to stretch the floor a little bit more as he gets older and more into his career. But Zion's underrated because no one's talking about him anymore. And that kind of leads me right into my next thing, which is my thoughts on media attention. In my podcast, Backcourt Press with my buddy Zach Vinci, we were discussing how the Clippers are not getting talked about at all, and how it's a good thing, because last year, if you think about it, all eyes were on the Clippers after the Kawhi Leonard, Paul George acquisitions, and everyone was like, "Oh, they have to win. They have to win. They if they don't win the championship, it's a failure." And as soon as they lost, the media ripped them apart, ripped Paul George apart for having a bad series. It was crazy. And for a team like the Clippers with Kawhi, who's never been a big media guy, and Paul George, who has been throughout his career, but for this team to have so much riding on them still, and yet not get any media press compared to teams like the Lakers and even the Jazz, the Warriors, Mavericks especially, and then Eastern Conference teams like the Nets. I mean, the Nets are on the media right now. But I think it's great for the Clippers to not have to worry about the media ripping them apart for one bad shot. Paul George misses a bad shot or something, and the media is not ripping them apart for it. So if we're going to talk media attention, I think it's great. that some players are falling off, some players are coming up. Like LaMelo coming up and we all expected that with the hype LaMelo Ball guy, even from high school. I want to see what happens to him in the media next year because Zion was the biggest, like the most viewed prospect since like LeBron James, and in his second year, he's rarely getting any notice for averaging 24 and 8. Which if another player was doing this at his position, that'd be, I mean, incredible. And those are incredible stats, especially on his efficiency. So media attention can be good for some teams, bad for other teams. Like the Lakers deserve it. You have the best player in the world, and my second running an MVP right now, and they get all the media attention in the world as they deserve. And so I think the Clippers staying a little under the radar and still being the second best team in the West right now behind the Lakers. I'm sorry, Jazz fans. Let's see what happens when you guys start missing threes. I think it's a great thing for the Clippers and especially for Kawhi Leonard and his legacy because Kawhi Leonard and that Raptors team went so under the radar until that Game 7 shot against the 76ers, and they went on to win the championship. Kawhi Leonard's always been that quiet guy who doesn't like media attention, and he doesn't have any right now, and we think it's me, Zach and I, from our podcast, we talked about, we think it's great. That's really all I got for today. I was going to talk about a little bit about the West and who's next up behind the Lakers and Clippers at 1 and 2. I'll do that quickly. I guess I'm going to put Jazz at 3. I'm going to put Suns at 4, and I'm going to put Warriors at 5. If the Warriors can play the way that they did last night, I don't see any team beating them in a 7-game series. And I'm sorry, but the way that they shot the ball, which they won't, that's why I'm saying this, because there's no way that they can keep that up for a 7-game series. Jazz are good. Jazz can make some threes, and Quinn Snyder's coach of the year so far. So that's everything I wanted to cover for this episode. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I really don't know, but follow me on Instagram at Backcourt Press, Twitter at Backcourt Press _, and subscribe to my YouTube. And let me know what your thoughts are on, Zion, the Clippers, and if you're a Nuggets fan, tell me what you think of Paul Millsap, because God, it is weird to see. But thank you all for watching. I will catch you on another day. Peace out.